Esther. Let's see. Last week we stopped at chapter 3, verse 4. So this week we'll pick up right where we left off. Chapter 3, verse 5. So earlier this week I got another one of them stupid text messages that says I owe toll money in Massachusetts. And it's been nearly 20 years since I set foot in the state. So I know it's fake, but I do have to say they're getting better. Listen to me now. The first time I got one of these, it came from an international phone number, and so I knew immediately it was false. How do you got a country code of Saudi Arabia and you're sending me a text message about tolls in Massachusetts, right? That's ridiculous. I didn't look up the country code, John. I just guessed. I made up a country. But now they actually texted me from a Massachusetts phone number, so it looks a little more believable. They're getting better. But as I was thinking about that and thinking about what we're going to read tonight, a question went through my mind, right? Like, what kind of mind does it take to dream up a scheme like that, right? Send out a text message saying, hey, you owe back fees, and if you don't do something about it, we're going to suspend your driver's license. To any law-abiding citizen, your initial reaction is, crap, I need to take care of that. And your inclination is to click on the little link and give them money. But how do people come up with that junk? I mean, I guess it wouldn't be hard if you had a mind to. I mean, I'm a fairly smart guy. I can solve problems and figure out how to fix things. But it never crossed my mind to come up with something like that. I don't know. So I think the missing factor in at least probably most of our thought processes is the heart that's required to motivate you to come up with something like that. So tonight we're going to look at something similar, right? A scheme, a con, invented by a man that's enraged with anger and hatred, fueled by his own pride and self-value. He will invent a con to try and serve his dubious desires, and where we stop tonight, it will seem like he's going to succeed, right? The story's still building, but we're only in the 3rd chapter, so you have to keep coming on Wednesday night if you want to find out what happens. All right, so we'll do verses 5 through 15, which will finish chapter 3 tonight. So let's read our verses and we'll dive in. So Esther Chapter 3, starting at verse 5. Then Haman saw that Mordecai was not bowing down or prostrating himself before him. So Haman was filled with wrath. But he despised in his eyes to send forth his hand against Mordecai alone, for they had told him who the people of Mordecai were. Therefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai who were throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes. In the 1st month, which is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Xerxes, that is the lot, was cast before Haman from day to day and from month to month until the 12th month, that is the month Adar. Then Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people scattered and separated among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of all other people, and they do not do the king's laws. So it is not worth it for the king to let them remain. If it seems good to the king, let it be written down that they should perish, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do this work to bring into the king's treasuries. Then the king removed his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the adversary of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, the silver is yours, and the people also, to do with them according to what is good in your eyes. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the 1st month, and it was written just as Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, and to the princes of each people, each province according to its script, each people according to its tongue, being written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. And letters were sent by the hand of couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause all the Jews to perish, both young and old, little ones and women, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to plunder their spoil. A copy of that which was written down to be given as law in every province was revealed to all the peoples, so that they should be ready for this day. The couriers went out, hastened by the word of the king, and the law was given at the citadel in Susa. Now the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was in confusion. So in verses 5 and 6, Mordecai continues to fail to bow down or prostrate himself before Haman. And it continues to infuriate and enrage Haman. But in his wisdom, Haman's decided that he doesn't want revenge on Mordecai alone, but rather on all the Jewish people. Haman had been told the reason Mordecai refused to bow before him was because he was a Jew. And Haman, given his Amalekite background, is now interested in punishing the whole people of Mordecai, not just Mordecai himself. Haman sees in Mordecai not just a man who refuses to submit to him, but a whole people who refuse to recognize their place in the world. In Haman's mind, these people have been a nuisance since the Exodus, when Amalek initially attacked the Israelites on their way to the Promised Land. All right, if you guys remember, as the Israelites make their way out of Egypt toward the Promised Land, Amalek attacked them from the rear. And Israel was forced to defend themselves. You guys have all heard this story, right? It's the famous battle where Moses puts Joshua in charge of the army, and then Moses goes up to the mountain to pray, and as long as his hands are in the air, they win, and when his hands fall, they start to lose. And so I think it's Aaron and Hur, I think, are the two guys that hold Moses' arms up for him. Well, Joshua was leading the army. Oh, maybe Caleb and Hur. Caleb's the other young man that served under Moses. I didn't look it up. I was going off memory. But so that was the first fight between Amalek and Israel, right? And that's why God sent Saul after Amalek, and then when Saul failed, again sent David after Amalek. So it's a long-running feud, if you will. Here's an interesting fun fact you may not know. Did you know Amalek was a grandson of Esau? Think about that. So the bad blood goes back as far as Jacob and Esau. So Haman knows his family history. He knows the Israelite family history, right? And he knows that he despises the Jews for two reasons, and he wants to wipe them out. His two reasons: one is bad blood that goes back many generations, right? And two, jealous rage, which is fueled entirely by his pride. Haman is basically second in command of the kingdom, and he can't figure out for the life of him why these stubborn Jews won't bow down to him. It's simple. Just get on your knees and lean forward. That's all he wants. And the king obviously thinks he's something great. He's been made second in the kingdom. So what's wrong with everyone else? That's Haman's thinking, right? So he sees himself as being a cut above the rest because of his accomplishments and the way he's maneuvered himself politically. He thinks everyone should get out of his way when he walks through the space, and everyone should stand in awe of him. I think all the time he spent with King Xerxes was going to his head. You guys know Persian kings claimed to be a form of deity on earth, similar to how the Roman Caesars claimed to be a form of God on earth. It originated in the Middle to Far East, right, with the Persians. And so Xerxes paints himself out to be a god. And I think spending all that time with Xerxes has Haman thinking, hey, I'm number two. I'm pretty close. And so these people won't do what he wants, and he is going to take his vengeance on them. All right, so verse 7, if you just read it at face value, it's kind of odd. First, it gives us when we are, which I appreciate because that helps me frame things in my mind. First month of the 12th year of Xerxes. So that's the month of Nisan, the first month in the Jewish calendar, in the year 474 BC. So it's been 5 years since he married Esther. So Esther's been queen for 5 years, and things have been quiet and merry and happy. there are large gaps in the narrative that are a number of years at a time, right? And I think that's intentional, not just because it's narrating history and that's how it happened, but God often doesn't work on our timing. He works slowly, or at his pace anyhow. So it's a slow and patient process. So the first month is Nisan, and that's the month that the Passover is celebrated. The Passover starts on 14 Nisan, right? Just keep that in your head. It's not consequential, but it's interesting the timing of this. So, in the end, the decree goes out on the 13th day of the first month. So literally the day before Passover, as they're making all their preparations for the Passover meal and to sacrifice the lamb, he sends out this decree. Almost like robbing all the Jews of their joy in their religious celebration. So, back to verse 7. It says, Haman had lots cast before him day to day and month to month until the 12th month. And just to read that, it's kind of weird. You're like, what does that mean? Does that mean 12 months has gone by? No, because later on it's going to say on the 13th day of the first month. So it seems to me that what's going on here is Haman has come up with a scheme, right? Okay, I'm going to get rid of these people and this is how I'm going to go about it. But like any good pagan, he says, let me call the magicians and the diviners and the seers and get them to help me figure out when. I got to have a solid plan before I go to the king and try to sell this. I need to have a when. I need to get the astrologers to look at the stars and tell me. And so they cast the lots through the months of the year until the lot lands on a month, and then through the days of that month until the lot lands on a day. That's how he comes up with the 13th day of the 12th month, right? He's literally rolling the dice to see what the will of the gods is. Verses 8 and 9. Now that Haman has his plan, he goes to Xerxes about it. He says, I got an idea, king. And he's going to do something kind of devious, right? He's going to tell a half-truth, a partial lie. Every good lie has to have elements of truth in it in order to be believable. And so let's take what Haman presents to the king and break down what's truthful and what's a lie, just so we can get a feel for what we're dealing with. So he starts with, there's a certain people scattered and separated among all the people in all the provinces. Now, this is true, right? The Jews are a certain people and they are scattered among all the provinces. So far, so good. Next, he says their laws are different from those of all other people. This is also true. This is a fact. Everyone turn to Deuteronomy chapter 4, if you would be so kind. And we're just going to read the first 8 verses of chapter 4. Or I'm going to read them, and you can listen and read along. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1. This is Moses speaking to the people of Israel. So now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I am teaching you to do, so you may live and go in and take possession of the land which Yahweh, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I am commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahweh your God which I am commanding you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh has done in the case of Baal Peor. For all the men who walked after Baal Peor, Yahweh your God has destroyed them from among you. That's talking about Balaam, right, when they went after the women in Moab. Verse 4. But you who clung to Yahweh your God are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as Yahweh my God commanded me, that you should do thus in the land where you are entering to possess it. You shall keep and do them, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as is Yahweh our God whenever we call on him? Now here's the punchline. Or what great nation is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as this whole law that I am setting before you today? Right? So basically Moses says there's no nation that has righteous and wise laws as Israel has. And that is 100% true. And the reason is because their law came from the living God himself. They have a law that is different and unique from all other people of the world, and it is a better, more superior law because it was commanded by the Almighty. Right? They may have to live under the laws of the Medes and Persians, but the law given to them by God is still better. And it is still uniquely Israel's possession at this time in history, right? Remember what God told the Israelites at another time. He said, "You shall be holy, for I am holy." Israel was meant to be different and peculiar from all other peoples. And so there's nothing inherently a lie about what Haman said in saying that they have a law that's like no other people. All right. So his next statement is that they don't keep the king's laws. Now there's your first lie. That's a lie. Lie alert. Your liar flag should be going off. Liz says lying face. Apparently nobody in my household is good at lying because she can see it right on your face and she'll say lying face. And she's normally right. All right. So Haman had observed one Jewish man defy the king's law and instead lumped in the whole group with him. He's grossly exaggerating the facts to play to his own purposes. And he says since they don't follow the king's laws, they're not worth being kept around. They're not even worth keeping alive, man. They don't even listen to you. So Haman not only lied, but there's also deception involved. He asked for the king's permission to exterminate a group of people and doesn't even identify to the king who the group of people he wants to exterminate is. Think about that. He never names them. He just says, hey, there's a certain people that need to go. And for some reason, the only thing more insane than that is Xerxes going, okay. There you go, do what you want. Like, what? So, in verse 9, Haman says, we should write a law to kill all these people off, that they should perish. And in addition, Haman volunteers to pay 10,000 talents of silver to pay the men that carry out the deed, and anything excess from that will go into the king's treasury. This is another deception. All right, at the time, it took about 15,000 talents of silver per year to operate the kingdom. So that's 2/3 of the annual budget of the entire Persian Empire that he offers to just give over. I have two questions. One, did he actually have that much money? Two, did he ever intend to pay it? We're not told the answer to either. My guess is, as bold as he was, it's probably yes to both. However, he also likely knew that given all the spoils he would steal from the deceased Jews in Susa, that he would recoup the money. Right? It's a double-edged sword, so to speak. And he also knows that Xerxes is a very proud man himself and probably won't let someone else foot the bill for carrying out laws in his name. Right? Xerxes is going to be like, no, I'll pay it. It's my law. Right? He's going to take, just like any good boss, Xerxes is going to take credit for whatever law Haman writes. He just doesn't realize what it is yet. So it is, the offer to pay the 10,000 talents is veiled, but it's a planned deception. He's tricking the king into footing the bill, so to speak. All right, verses 10 through 14, Xerxes takes off his signet ring and gave to Haman. Right, this is a big deal. Your signet ring is I know you guys all know this, but I maybe Robert doesn't. The ring has an image on it, and you would melt wax and fold the piece of paper in half and put the wax over the two edges of the paper and then sink the ring in the wax, and it would leave an imprint, and that's the king's seal. And as long as that seal is intact, it came from the king, it was sealed by him, and nobody's read your letter. So by giving his signet ring to Haman, Xerxes gives Haman the authority of himself. Right? So he literally hands Haman the whole kingdom for a short period of time. Haman literally could have written anything he wanted to into the law, signed it with the king's name and signet ring, and that would have been it. That would have been law. Xerxes would have been held to it. Imagine if he had been ambitious enough to try and do something like name himself the heir. Clearly Haman wasn't quite that stupid, but still very risky on Xerxes' part to just hand over his signet ring and say, do what you want. Then Xerxes tells him, yep, the silver is also yours along with all the people. Do what you wish. So Xerxes agrees to pay the price that Haman offered to pay and gives Haman his blessing to command whatever he likes with regards to the people. I'm just like, you're supposed to be the king, man. I don't know. All right, the day before Passover, the 13th, all the king's scribes are summoned in. Haman writes the law as he sees fit, sends it out to all the provinces, all the governors, all the princes, and all the rules in their own languages and their own script, right? Their own writing. It's written in the name of the king and sealed with his signet ring. And it goes out by courier to all the different provinces of the empire. And, there's Wendy Wyndham's carrying mail all across the empire. And the letter commands that on the 13th day of the 12th month, all the Jews in the empire are to be killed and their property taken as spoils. Notice he specifies that everyone's to be killed, young and old, women and children. And it's interesting to me, it's very similar to the command Saul received concerning the Amalekites, except for two differences. The first difference, Saul was told, take no spoil, destroy everything. Haman permits him to take spoil. That's probably the more minor difference. The second difference is the command against the Amalekites was God's judgment against their evil ways, and this is one man's judgment against an entire people with no foundation. So the law is revealed to all the people of the empire, and everyone's aware of it. In verse 15, we're told Xerxes and Haman sit down to drink. But the entirety of the capital city is in confusion. Right? I'm sure you can imagine the reaction of all the people in the town and across the empire, right? This decree comes out and you're like, why? Where did this come from? What did these people do? Right? Because Haman makes it sound like there's this big empire-wide problem of these people that don't follow the king's laws. But nobody in the empire would have been aware of it because it's Haman's own imagination that's worked that up. So it would have thrown everyone into confusion, and nobody knows exactly what's going on. But Xerxes and Haman are going to get drunk. Right back to how we started. All right, so the primary driving force of what happens in chapter 3 is Haman's pride. He had an absolute disdain for a man that refused to bow down to him and recognize him as someone superior. And we had a whole talk about pride earlier in the series, so I'm not going to go back through that, but I want to offer another word of caution concerning pride. Pride will cause you to burn with anger and hatred that you normally would not harbor in your heart. There's something about getting your way and feeling like you're entitled to something that causes people to do horrible things that they normally wouldn't do. Self-interest and selfishness are the root of many problems in life. Beware of your heart. The media will tell you, follow your heart and trust your heart, and I tell you, your heart is full of wicked evil, and you need to trust the Spirit of God and nothing else. Do not trust your heart. Your heart will lie to you. Your heart will tell you that she's wrong, and he's wrong, and he's wrong, and she's wrong, and you're right. and it's everyone else that needs to change. Right? If everyone else is wrong and you're the only one that's right, chances are your perception is wrong. You are human, and as such, you are subject to fall into the trap that pride lays. It is very easy to stand around and say you don't have a problem with pride until it's time to buy something new that you're going to share with someone else. And it comes time to go pick it up or go pick it out. And then what you care about becomes really important. Right? Think about buying a car with your spouse. Right? You want certain features, she wants certain features. Robert, you can look around all you like. Think about buying stuff for the shop or buying new chairs for the church or putting new carpet in the church. How many churches have been torn apart by people fighting over the color of the carpet? Seriously. I'm sure people in this room can share personal stories from some point. Pride will show itself most plainly when it comes to making choices. When you have to choose between your own interests and the interests of others, you'll find out whether or not you have a pride problem. All right, I'll let that sit. That's probably enough on pride. Okay, the next thing. Xerxes has shown a horrible attitude of complacency through this whole book. We're only 3 chapters in. He's just comfortable. He trusts his leaders and advisors, and he takes their word for it. And I don't really get it. He's just completely apathetic. It's almost like he doesn't care. Maybe his focus was somewhere else. He's worried about going back to Greece to try and take it over. But he doesn't care enough to ask a couple of careful and pointed questions. He never says, Haman, who are these people? He never asks, if they're so horrible that they need to die, why are we going to wait 11 months to do it? It would seem to me that if it's so bad that they need to die, we should probably handle that like next week or sooner. So with big picture stuff like that, it's easy to identify where he's not paying attention and where he's not thinking. But we all do get apathetic. And it's especially a risk within church and church life. We're all happy to come in on Sunday and sit in our normal seats and let things function as usual. The problem with that is time and space never stop. And when we stop and just start watching it go by, much like Xerxes did, we hand over the kingdom of Christ to other people or just assume someone else is going to handle it. But we are Christ's church. We are his representatives on earth. We are his ambassadors. We don't have room for apathy. We have a mission. Our mission statement is plain and clear. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all the nations. Our work is too important to sit around and watch the world go by. Our mission carries eternal consequences, and not just for our own souls, but for the souls of everybody we meet. Where would you be sitting today if the person that preached the gospel to you the first time had just let that opportunity go by? So finally, on that note, notice how quickly the word of the new law got out to the whole empire. The couriers went out, hastened by the word of the king, and they spread the word rapidly. And our command is to take the news of the gospel to the entire empire. The king of the earth who created it has commanded you to go and tell the good news to everybody. Why are we not doing that? And why are we not hastening the spread of the word of the king? The king has commanded that it be spread with haste. Jesus gave us the unique and special privilege to be his ambassadors to the world. You were born when and where you were by his design. You were put here for such a time as this. When I face him on Judgment Day, I want to tell him honestly and plainly, I told everybody I could. And I already know I've failed in that some days. But we should still seek to be better and to do better. It's the most important message that you can share. Some people say, I just don't know how to talk to people about Jesus. Well, I'll give you a couple recommendations on how to go about it. Just tell them what Jesus has done for you in your life. Tell them how your life has been transformed and changed. It carries weight. It's experiential. And if there's anything I've learned about the younger generation, these people, they care about authenticity and experience. They want to hear your personal testimony. They don't want to hear you present a gospel tract. They want to hear you talk about what's real and what happened in your heart. But if you're not comfortable doing that, sure, use a gospel tract. Memorize a short speech. Here, I wrote this without scripture, referencing any scripture, just off the top of my head as I was putting this together. This is all people need to know. You have sinned. You've done wrong in your life. There's a God that created all things, and one day He will personally judge you for everything you've ever done, and His standard is perfection. In order for us to meet the standard of perfection, He sent His Son Jesus, who lived a perfect, sinless life that we could not obtain, and then allowed Himself to be crucified on our behalf. He died, was buried, and on the third day rose from the grave, proving that He had both accomplished His mission and defeated sin and death. And now, by placing our faith in Him for salvation, He will wash us clean and give us a new heart that will seek to live for Him and His will. All right, that's the gospel in a nutshell. You don't have to memorize a speech. People have ears to hear will listen. And people that don't need seeds sown in their heart as well. Don't squander an opportunity to share the gospel. That's all I got, y'all. Get off my soapbox now. Questions? Comments? Rebukes? Discussion? No? All right, cool. Well, let's